trying to get by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Ilya able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani. Around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal.
And the fans want one. Score! On the floor! On the board! Paul Kariya!
All right. It may be a blizzard here for me, but it's sunny in Anaheim. Is it not? Sonny Milano turns out to be the Anaheim Ducks legend to become after the Ducks got him at the deadline. Obviously, we have to break down some of these deadline moves a bit more, but man, what a debut for that guy. I mean, we expected Devon Shore was going to get traded, but did not expect whatever return we were going to get for Devon Shore to pay immediate dividends in a debut 2-goal effort for Sonny Milano.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's kind of a little bit of a combination of both needed a little bit of a change in scenery, but I'm more than happy with what we got, and it showed in that first game.
Exactly. Well, we got to break down those trades, I think, probably before we go over at least the Edmonton game. We'll start the show with the Ducks versus Vegas game that we have to kind of get back to. The 6-5 OT loss. Just an insane game to watch. Back and forth. Ducks were down 5-3, 3 minutes remaining. A couple empty net goals, both by Adam Henrique, who's just on an absolute tear right now with 6 points in his last 2 games. And the former Ducks come back to bite Anaheim in this game. William Karlsson gets a hat trick in regulation. And then Shea Theodore gets the OT winner. A tough one. I liked their fight back in the end of that game. And coming back and at least getting a point out of that game. Obviously, the point doesn't matter much for the Ducks right now as 2 points matter for the Vegas Golden Knights. But that effort is something we haven't seen too much this year, especially against a good team like Vegas. So, there's some highs and lows in that game, but obviously Adam Henrique having a 4-point night, and Nick Ritchie in what happened to be his last game for the Ducks had 2 goals and 2 assists. One of probably his better games of his entire career with Anaheim, just happened to be his last.
He's kind of a little beneficiary of a couple of those goals. It kind of landed right to him, and he just happened to know how to put it in the net this time. This game was a lot of fun, a lot of ebb and flows, and kind of but I mean, the fact that we got 5 goals out of it, they were able to come back. That was fun, especially since we were shut out the game before, and then the game before that we only scored 1 goal. So we're starving for goals, and then it didn't look like it was going to start off all that good. And then just with I think half a second left in the first, was enough to kind of at least give us a little bit of hope that maybe the game's not totally lost. But it was really weird. A lot of former Ducks getting a lot of goals, and then some guys you didn't really expect to get a whole bunch of goals, as far as Ritchie and even Devon Shore scoring a goal. Guys that we don't normally see.
He gets one in his last game too. A nice send-off for the two of them.
Yeah, right. I mean, they upped their value apparently. That team wanted to get him all of a sudden.
Clearly, Devon Shore upped his value with that late goal.
That 1 goal.
Let's get to the trades, because we haven't had a public show where we've broken these down. Some of you listening were on for our Patreon show, where we broke down not just the Ducks trades, but pretty much all the big trades and trade deadline, and a couple that happened before. But we'll break down the trades a bit more in detail. The last show we did publicly, me and Jason were both on the show for that one, and we looked at who could be traded for the Ducks, and a few of the guys we thought could be traded were traded, and there was a few surprises thrown in there too, and I think we'll get to Nick Ritchie after the first trade. I think that was the big surprise, but first trade of the day, Derek Grant traded to the Philadelphia Flyers for a 4th-round pick, and AHLer Kyle Criscuolo, I think is how it's said, but
nailed it.
Yeah, we'll go with that. But a nice depth and some support for San Diego. And then it's the 4th-round pick that comes back. I know we kind of bounced between a 3rd and a 4th is what Derek Grant probably would get. think gets fair value. He did. Yes, he had 14 goals, but he only had 20 points, and he is a fourth line player. He does a lot of things well, but outside of Anaheim, if you look at his career, he hasn't had success. So I don't think the Flyers were ready to cough up a third-round pick for him. But the Ducks had given up their fourth-round pick to get Nick Delorier, so essentially they get that back. By trading Derek Grant. So it's not the worst trade. I mean, he's an unrestricted free agent. You needed to move him to get something, and you get a fourth-round pick where I have confidence the Ducks scouting staff can at least do something potentially with that pick.
Yeah, and I just hope that, once again, that conversation with Derek Grant was had between him and management, just like, hey, gotta let you go. Do what you can. See if you can win a cup. We want nothing but the best for you. And I would think, obviously, we'd really like you back because we loved everything you did. But at this point, we can maybe get some value and then talk, in the summer. And I know we'd love to have you back. As long as it wasn't, he doesn't get pissed that they trade me again. And sometimes that can affect players. So, we'll see. Even if it doesn't really happen, it's disappointing. But it was kind of a necessary thing for a team that's trying to rebuild and stock with a little bit more of the draft picks.
Yeah, the Ducks didn't have too many unrestricted free agents, and I mean, most of them we thought were actually going to be gone. Michael Del Zotto actually didn't get traded.
Yeah, that was surprising to me. I thought
a bit
it was
surprising.
Prime to go.
Well, yeah, considering the Ducks did bring in two other left shot defensemen, you would think that Del Zotto being an unrestricted free agent and probably having a bit more value than what the Ducks got for him last year in a 6th-round pick, and that somebody would take him. Clearly not, or maybe Bob Murray just didn't want to move him. Who knows? But he didn't end up going. But a guy who did end up going, and probably the biggest surprise of the day, was Nick Ritchie. Got traded to the Boston Bruins, which I think is a great fit for him in the way he plays and the fact that he's not going to be asked to play a major role there when you look at the players in front of him, including Andre Kasha. This kind of felt like a follow-up to that deal. But the Ducks get Danton Heinen in return. A bit more of a productive player points-wise than Nick Ritchie has. Obviously, people have pointed out that Heinen, for most of those years, did play occasionally with Patrice Bergeron, so that does inflate that a bit. But the first 2 years of Heinen's career would both be career highs in points and I believe goals as well for Nick Ritchie. So he comes in as a bit more of a productive player, a bit more of a defensive player than Nick Ritchie, but maybe it's a change of scenery here. And we had some comments from Bob Murray that we'll get to later on that Nick Ritchie trade, but that's kind of what it felt like with this deal.
I love it just for the lack of penalty minutes we'll incur at the stupidest times. So
that's the big win.
Once again, he can go out, do great with Boston. I'm not going to be like, oh man, why do we get rid of him? He's so good. It's just we've given him more than enough time, and we've seen enough of these penalties, and and he's a big guy, and he fits that mold over there a little bit, the big rough and tumble. So let him have success over there. We'll kind of stick with our guy and see where we can go from there. But that experiment was given a long process to kind of hopefully happen, and it never did. So nice trade. Both go their own ways. We had a lot of those. Just it was nice. Thank you. We'll go this way. Just different person.
Yeah, and one thing we mentioned on the Patreon show was there's a lot of, I guess, people that were either loving that Nick Ritchie got traded or absolutely hated that Nick Ritchie got traded. And
I think they didn't like what they got in return. They thought they should get another first rounder or someone.
Yeah, or even just a pick, a 2nd-round pick, something. When you look at the value that some of these players are going for, and the fact that Nick Ritchie is not making a ton of money and has some term, that there was that argument that maybe you could have got a 2nd-round pick for him. And then there's also the argument, why are you trading one of the your best play drivers when you go and kind of dive into the analytics side. To kind of tackle the first side of that argument with why would you not take a 2nd-round pick for Nick Ritchie? If you look at some of the Ducks' most recent 2nd-round picks, it's going to take him about 3, 4, 5 years to make it to the NHL. You look at Benoit Olivier Groulx. He's in his 3rd season since being drafted. He'll be in the AHL next year, so they make that 4 years, and maybe he makes the Ducks the year after that on the 5th year. And the Ducks don't have that time, I don't think, right now to wait on a guy like that. You'll take a 1st-round pick with Andre Kasha because you can bank on potentially a 1st-round pick making it a bit sooner. Look at Isaac Lindstrom. Look at Sam Steele. Look at Jacob Larson. Their turnaround was a bit quicker than a 4 to 5 year period. So you'll take the 1st-round pick, but a 2nd-round pick, especially a late one from a team like Boston, you're looking at more of a guy who's projected around the 3rd round. The Ducks just don't have the time to wait. And you bring in a player like Danton Heinen who can play now. He's a bit more disciplined than Nick Ritchie is, defensively responsible, and is not required to be your best play driver. Nick Ritchie should not be your best play driver. And the problem is, even if he is your best play driver, the production isn't there for Nick Ritchie. So there's a disconnect there where he's driving play, he's using his size, he's got the puck possession going on, but there's no finish there, and there's no distribution from him. The points aren't getting put on the board, so there's some disconnect there between being a good play driver and being a point producer.
Yeah, I mean, eventually it's what's on the board, and the one thing he can consistently put on the board is penalty minutes. And so, I mean, at some point we're over it, and we're tired of waiting for that. So, it'd be tough to even get a second rounder for him because he really, even though the underlying things are there, eventually they're going to go, well, what? How many goals has he scored? That's it?
Yeah.
Really? Okay, no, we're not going to invest heavily, on future draft picks for someone who hasn't really ever proven that he's a legitimate goal scorer.
And I was one of the people that thought Nick Ritchie got a bit of a bad rap in Anaheim for being, a former 10th overall pick, and a lot of us, myself included, couldn't get past that for a long time, and what the Ducks could have got. Everybody goes back and looks at that Pastrnak was drafted like 15th overall or something, or even in the late 20s. I can't remember exactly where Pastrnak was drafted, but him or Dylan Larkin went in the mid-teens. Like, that's what people always kind of go back and look at. And you look at Bob Murray's comments on Nick Ritchie. He said, "We let teams know that he would be available for a while. Some players at different times need a change of scenery. We felt at this time that Nick should have a change of scenery, and then that's how this deal came together." I think that's exactly how I kind of feel about Nick Ritchie. It was never going to happen in Anaheim. He could be he was a good player. Like, I'm not going to say he was a bad player, but it was never going to live up to the expectations that people had for him when he was drafted 10th overall. And that was always going to be a hurdle he would have to get over here. And now you go to Boston and you don't really hear about that because their fans don't have that kind of PTSD with you missing out on some of those players in that draft.
Yeah, that expectation level for him. I mean, they want him to come in, fill in, a role down there, and once playoffs start going, maybe his guy's a little bit rough and tumble in there, and it fits their style maybe a little bit better without the expectation of having to carry part of the team. Because Boston's got that part on lockdown. He's just secondary support after that.
Yeah, and I like more what Danton Heinen could bring to this team. I think he's not as good of a play driver. He's a bit more of a defensive forward when you go in and you dive into the analytics side of it. But he is a good, smart player. And I think he's a nice role player for a team down the road. When the Ducks are looking to be competitive again, if his game develops a little bit, he could be a very good third-line player for this team. That I like the move, and you don't have to worry about putting him out there in an important situation and taking a bad penalty, right? Like that's the issue that we had with Nick Ritchie is when can we put this guy out there? Can we put him out there in the last 3 minutes if we need a goal? Is he going to take a bad penalty? You don't have that worry. It's early, but you don't have that worry with Danton Heinen when you look at kind of his history and what he's done with the Bruins. And you could argue that maybe down the road that the production will be there a bit more than it will be for Nick Ritchie. And it's tough to say that after Nick Ritchie's last game was a 4-point effort, and Heinen, as great as the assist was, had a pretty mediocre night on his debut.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest, the saddest people are going to be all those people who are on Forever Mighty 3 stars and have to guess who's going to take the first penalty of the game. Because that was pretty good lock when it was Ritchie, but now it's anyone's guess. So
we had somebody kind of reach out and mention that, saying they're disappointed now that easy guess isn't going to be there, because now it's anybody's guess who's going to take the first penalty for the Ducks. It really could be anybody. Yeah. Let's get into. I said the Nick Ritchie trade was the most surprising. I think the Devon Shore trade wasn't surprising that he got traded. We kind of speculated he could be on his way out. He was scratched for a ton of games this year. He's a restricted free agent at the end of the year. But the fact that they got something as valuable as Sonny Milano, and I don't want to say Sonny Milano had a ton of value, but just we thought like maybe Devon Shore could get a 4th or a 5th round pick if the Ducks are lucky. And they go out and get a guy, you know, we talk about Nick Ritchie needing a change of scenery. They get a guy in Sonny Milano who definitely needed a change of scenery away from Columbus, fell out of favor with John Tortorella, fell out of favor with the team in general. But this is a guy who was 16th overall pick not too long ago. He's only 23. He's got plenty of time to figure things out. He obviously has the skill, has the speed. And for him, and from what we've heard from Columbus fans, it was just kind of a commitment thing and a consistency for him to kind of put up that play on a regular basis. But this is a home run even if it doesn't work out. Like, even if he just becomes a regular player in the Ducks lineup, a third line, maybe energy guy who can contribute to offense every now and then, that's essentially what Devon Shore already was and I was already struggling to do. And then, you bring in a younger guy who can be here for a while and potentially could get back to that potential that people had for him being drafted 16th overall. Like, at one point, people thought this guy could be a bona fide top 6 forward when he was drafted. So, that's a home run right there, just being able to get the chance to have a player like that.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of at least a little bit of what we had in Sprong. It's like Sprong has that ability, that offensive gift that's there, but for whatever reason, it just didn't sit quite right with management and how he plays the game, and didn't quite sit right with the head coach, and they wanted him to work on things, and it just wasn't his style, and it kind of fell out of favor. Didn't get a whole lot of chance. I don't think he played. I don't think Sprong played for us, or if he did, it was maybe 1 or 2 games here and there.
Yeah, he played a couple games this year, not too many.
So once again, I think it's like, hey, if you're out of favor with him, we'll give you Shore. We're really using him anyway, so come on over. Let's see what this kid can do. Maybe you like his style a little bit better. And then once again, Sprong can go have a change of scenery. He's another one that kind of went out, I think, to Washington.
Yep.
Give them a chance, and we'll take it, because that was a damn impressive start for Milano, so everyone's pretty happy to think about that one.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get more into his debut after we break down the trades, and we'll go into that Edmonton game. But I mean, just the effort that you saw from Sonny Milano on that first goal, like, if that's the sign of things to come, it seems like a player that even if he doesn't put up the points, is just consistently going to be a good player, and if he's gonna put that effort forward on a night-to-night basis, he's going to be a dangerous player for the Ducks no matter what. He's getting put on in the best opportunity to succeed right off the bat, playing with Ryan Getzlaf and Rickard Rakell. I don't think he's ever gotten an opportunity to play in a role like that with Columbus.
Yeah, and he'll adhere himself to become a fan favorite just because of the effort. For the most part, everyone just loves a guy who's going to put in the effort, is exciting to watch, and is constantly trying. That's why people really liked Kasha. That's why people loved Cogliano. At least the effort was there. And if he can have that a better finishing touch and go from there, he very quickly will become everyone's favorite. It's a good start.
Yeah, he's got a great name too, so that doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I know.
It's an easy one to like. Here's another trade I didn't expect to happen because it's not really a big one, and it's just a swapping of similar assets. But Korbinian Holzer got sent to the Nashville Predators, and the Ducks got Matt Irwin, who's basically kind of a similar player, and I would argue maybe Matt Irwin is a bit better of a player than Korbinian Holzer is, and they got a 2022 6, which it's a couple drafts away, and it's a 6th-round pick, so it doesn't mean anything. But the fact that you're able to get that pick, which is probably what Holzer's worth, plus a roster player for like that, I don't want to say it's not impressive, but it's at least something. Like, I didn't expect Holzer to move or for them to even get anything for him.
Yeah, it's like you had a dollar bill and you traded and you got $1.25. You're like, all right, I can deal with that. I got a quarter out of this.
It's a bit of an upgrade. You'll take it. They didn't.
All right, I'll take it. All right, nothing bad. I got to downplay it, but I'm not going like, wow, I really tricked them. Yeah. So
just shake it with the ball.
He had a all right debut too. I mean, he didn't look any more out of place than Holzer might have. And that's his first time playing and kind of getting used to everything. So.
Yeah, he made a couple good plays, and
I think he was blocking shots. It seemed like, or at least he was better at it. It seemed like.
I think that's Matt Irwin's bread and butter, and I'm trying to remember Matt Irwin back when, not when he was a kind of a household name, but when he was a bit more of a a guy you talked about rather than being an in and out of the lineup type guy. But yeah, I if I remember correctly, that was kind of Matt Irwin's game, is to be a shot blocker, be just a reliable guy back there that you don't have to worry too much about. Basically, the type of guy, if you notice him, then he's doing something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, usually just a steady guy.
Yeah. Let's get to the trade you kind of referenced a bit earlier. Daniel Sprong, you felt like with Sonny Milano coming in, that Daniel Sprong's days were numbered. Actually, when the Andre Kasha trade happened, people thought, oh, this is going to be Sprong's chance to jump into the lineup. And then Sonny Milano comes in, and you know he's going to get a chance. And obviously the Heinen for Richie swap, you know Heinen's going to play. And basically the spots available for Daniel Sprong filled up pretty quickly. And the Ducks shipped him out to Washington, and they got Christian Djuse in return. Another Swedish player. The Ducks were loading up on Swedish defensemen in the trade deadline here. They got Axel Andersson, Christian Djuse, and they ended up getting Joel Persson. We'll get to that trade after this as well. But they picked up 3 Swedish defensemen, so just to add to the crop here. But not a bad trade. I mean, Daniel Sprong clearly felt a favor, not just with Bob Murray, but with Dallas Eakins as well. Wasn't exactly tearing it up down in San Diego. And when you look at the options available for the Ducks right now, on third pairing lefty, Larson hasn't looked great. Michael Del Zotto we thought would be traded, but isn't a guy who's going to be around long term. Josh Mahura hasn't really been given the chance yet. So you bring in an offensive-minded guy in Christian Djuse, and you have the potential to maybe change the scenery for him. That we've mentioned it multiple times already, and change of scenery. But maybe that is something that works out for him. Maybe he finds a home here. He can be, I guess on this team he's a PP1 guy with Fowler and Lindholm hurt. But maybe eventually he could be a power play 2 guy, where he is just kind of a nice piece to have to put on the power play. I like this move. I don't think Sprong was ever going to get another chance here, so the fact they were able to get a good young player that could potentially be a 5 or a 6 defenseman down the road and be an offensive minded one, which is a position they don't really have when you look at their blue line. It's a lot of two-way guys. It's nice to bring in that piece that the Ducks really don't have, even in San Diego, I guess, other than Josh Mahura.
Yeah, exactly. Sprong might be able to correct the lineup. I mean, they got a lot of good forwards over there in Washington, but obviously, if he goes in, he's given a good shake at it, and kind of same thing with Milano. If he's able to play around with a lot of good other players, then maybe it kind of sparks him offensively, and if he gets a few goals, he can really quickly find himself a home there. And so, once again, same thing. He was fun to watch. He's a good player. Hope nothing but the best. I'm not going to feel bad if we got rid of him and he starts doing well. It just didn't look like it was really going to happen here. And so to get someone that's an offensive defenseman, let's take it. Let's see where that goes. Obviously, he wasn't going to be cracking much of the lineup there in Washington. Let's give him a chance over here because our defensive core is. It's all right. I mean,
that's how I describe it. And the thing I think is important is people kind of ripped Bob Murray's comments apart when he said he was looking for power play help and guys who could help on the power play. Now, he didn't go out and get a headline guy. He didn't get a Kalen Addison type prospect. He didn't go out and get a top 4 like a Justin Falk at the beginning of the season. He didn't get that type of guy. But when you look at the 3 defensemen he brought in, of course, they're all Swedish. But when you look at the scouting reports on these guys and kind of what people are saying and what other teams' fans are saying about these guys, these are offensive defensemen. Christian Djuse is an offensive defenseman. Joel Persson is an offensive defenseman. Axel Andersson, in his scouting report, is an offensive-minded defenseman. Now, they're not elite quality guys, but they are offensive-minded. And how many prospects or players in the Ducks system out of defensemen could you say are offensive minded? You could argue maybe Josh Mahura is. You could say with the production Chris Weidman's had, maybe he is offensive minded, but in the NHL that's really never kind of been his role. The Ducks added 3 defensemen to their system who are clearly offensive minded defensemen, and they added in a spot they didn't have, which I think when you look at some of the guys they shipped out, It is nice to add those types of guys to your system when you don't already have it. They're not going to make a huge impact, but I like the moves, and I kind of support that argument that Bob Murray has that you've got some defensemen who could help you on the power play now rather than some of the guys you had before.
Sorry. Yeah, and if you kind of think back at the beginning of the season, one of the biggest difference between last year and this year with the coach is they get the green light to kind of jump into that play, to keep the puck in, go down low, if you have that opportunity. And I think, we had a lot of those offensive guys for a while. Your Votanens, your Montours, your Theodores, and we had a lot of those guys. And then piece by piece they started going away. And we started getting more of the heavier guys or the two-way guys. And all of a sudden we got a new coach, new style. And it's a little bit more offensive, but we don't really have the guys that are going to match that skill set. So I'm wondering if like part of it is, you know, a conference between Dallas Aikens and Bob Murray. It's like, listen, this is kind of what worked a little bit better in San Diego. This is how I think the team can kind of run and be productive. But I don't really have those guys. I've got Holzer. I've got Manson, which is he's not very fast, very offensive minded. I got Lindholm. He's kind of in there, but other than that, Gooley's in and out every now and again. So it's like, maybe that had something to do with it a little bit, trying to get maybe those offensive guys that are going to be your 5-6 and maybe focus more on offense than instead of more on defense.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think bringing those guys in, likely they're all not going to make a huge impact with this team.
No.
Christian, if everything pans out for them, they're all probably 5-6 guys. Like Christian Hughes is a 5-6, Axel Anderson is projected as a 5-6. Some people think if he figures it all out, he's new to the North American game. This is his first year in North America playing in the WHL. Maybe he could be a 4 out of a stretch. I think it's a bit of a stretch, but there's that potential there. And Joel Person, in the same breath, he's first year in North America for him as well. And Bob Murray likes to take bargains on some of these guys. They know the Swedish defensemen. They clearly that is something they favor.
Scout it heavily.
And you can take a chance on one of these guys coming over in their first year, and maybe they figure things out down the road and surprise you a bit. And when you look at what they gave up for them, it's not too much. Obviously, Axel Anderson was part of the Andre Cassu deal, so it's hard to kind of just judge Anderson value on its own without the pieces that were also involved in it. But Joel Person was traded for Angus Redmond and potentially a 7th round pick if he plays 25 games for the Ducks next year. If he plays 25 games for the Ducks next year, that means he's doing something right. Or there's a ton of injuries, but hopefully it means he's doing something right, and he's become a decent piece of this team. So and all you had to give up for that is a 7th round pick. So all in all, I like what Bob Murray did. He didn't force a big move. Josh Manson has term. Silverberg has term. If you wanted to move one of these guys, you didn't have to do it at the deadline. You can wait and see, how the rest of the 20 games go here and what kind of value you get at the draft, and, base your decisions on both of those factors. And then if you want to move them, at the draft or in the summer, you have that option then.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's kind of an unusual day for that trade deadline for Anaheim fans, because this is the most deals we've done on trade deadline day in franchise history. And I think there was like a total of 8 or something like that.
They did 6 on deadline day, and then the Cassia one was the day before, so they had 7.
Day before.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was good. Like you said, it was no headliners other than Caution and Richie a little bit, but you're not going to usually get too many headliners for the most part while you're trying to get into a whole rebuild situation. You're trying to move minor pieces around and get those draft picks and try and restock where you can.
I guess it's 8 total acquisitions, because they did pick up Agazino from Pittsburgh on waivers, and he played in the game against Edmonton too, and then the Andre Cassia trade happening on the 21st. So 8 total acquisitions within the 21st to the 24th for the Ducks, which is, like you said, something we don't really see. They weren't headliners, but the Ducks always make a move on deadline day. I think it's 15 years in a row that they've made a move on deadline day. They're never big moves, but this year it felt like Bob Murray wanted to do something, and yes, it was shuffling of deck chairs, and it wasn't a major move, but he did something. He did more than enough, I think, to at least change this lineup a bit, and wasn't prepared to kind of move on from some of those guys just yet. I think he wants to use, bring in a couple new guys, see how they do, see how the young guys do, and see how the core guys between like 25 and 29 in this team respond. And then you can make a decision, in the offseason on whether, which guys you want to keep around, which guys you aren't impressed with, the direction you want to go with this team. Bob Murray made a comment that I think somebody asked him, like, where are you in the rebuild right now? He said, I don't know. It all depends on how they play for these rest of the 20 games here. And we'll make a decision based on that. And obviously who they get at the draft kind of goes into that too. But I really think these last games of the season here are going to make a decision for Bob Murray and what he does with some of these players, some of these core players on the Ducks in Manson and Silfverberg and Fowler and Raquel. This is a time for them to either prove they belong here or prove to Murray that he needs to move them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little bit of a tryout. You get a long training camp, if you want to call it that, but against some teams that are going to be coming in and looking to try and get to the playoffs. So that should be a good test. I mean, you're going to have good competition for people that want points. Take it away from them.
Exactly. Well, let's get into this Oilers game because we kind of left it a bit because of all the trades and the turnover in the lineup between the Vegas game and the Oilers game. The lines were definitely different heading into the game against the Oilers. Sonny Milano took over the top spot with Getzlaf and Raquel. Jones was there the last game before this. He moved down with Steele and Silfverberg. And Danton Heinen took over Nick Ritchie's spot with Adam Henrique. And with Troy Terry getting sent down to San Diego, Kiefer Sherwood played with Heinen and Henrique. And then Andrew Agozzino took over Derek Grant's spot between Nick Deslauriers and Carter Rowney. And then the blue line was relatively the same. Lindholm started the game with Manson. Larson moved up to play with Del Zotto. And then the two new boys in Kristen Jews and Matt Irwin played together on the third pairing. Actually looked pretty decent in this game. But, I like these lines. You got Heinen and Milano jumping into top six roles, playing with the Ducks' two best centers. And you've got Jones, Steele, and still getting a chance to play with Jakob Silfverberg and still having a productive player to play with. I like spreading out the offense, having a makeshift shutdown line in Henrique, Sherwood, and Heinen. I liked what Dallas Eakins did to introduce these new players into the lineup.
Yeah, my hope is that not much changes because the Edmonton Oilers are absolutely desperate for points. They got Connor McDavid back. Draisaitl still scored. There's still things to work out, but considering all the new faces that showed up for this game, I like the style that the Ducks played, and sometimes that's even better where it's just bringing a whole bunch of new people. They don't have a whole lot of time to get used to what the style is or what the attitude is, and they're just bringing their own game. And sometimes that's really nice to see, and it was really nice when we're talking about Milano because it was just fun to see that tenacity after the puck. It makes you kind of forget about Kasha a little bit. He has the same type of a dog chasing a ball. It's just like, I gotta get it. I need to go get it. I want to play with this. I want to go. And it showed in the first and last goal. Just smart little plays.
Yeah, it was just nice to see an effort from everybody on the team. Obviously the effort from Milano on the first goal, even before that goal, like he was hard on the forecheck, he was winning puck battles, he was creating turnovers, and then on the goal, he created a turnover, got the puck, and then kind of fought his way through a few guys, a couple pokes at it, and then ends up poking it past, I forget who's in net for the Oilers. Was it? Was
it Smith? It was
Smith.
So
poked it past Smith, but just the effort to kind of keep the play alive on that, create the turnover, then I ended up poking it past Smith. Like, that's what you want to see from a guy who's not only making his debut with the team, but has been given a great chance to play on the top line and get big minutes with Ryan Getzlaf and Rickard Rakell.
I watched that play, and I'm just like, if it was literally anybody else, maybe with the exception of Kasha, that as that puck starts to go away, that person stops trying.
Yeah, the play's
like,
dead.
Oh, there it goes. All right, it's a little too far. I'm not going to make an effort. I'll kind of see who gets it and then where I need to go. And this guy's just like, nope, I want it, and he's just going after it. And that's a mindset I don't see too often with the Ducks over the last couple of seasons. And I really hope it's infectious and it starts going to everybody because that want to go get it and not a wait and see approach is when the Ducks are at their best.
Yeah, and one, I think everybody in this game, especially the new guys, kind of had a chip on their shoulder. Sonny Milano has been kind of cast to the wayside in Columbus. They're coming in and they need to prove that they belong. And one guy, when you look at all the defensemen coming in, Juice coming in, Irwin coming in, a few guys getting hurt, Larson gets bumped up to a top 4 role he really hasn't had this year. It really felt Larson kind of took advantage of this game and said, hey, I need to prove that I belong here. We've got some new guys coming in. They could be fighting for my position in that bottom pairing. And you look at the play he made to get Nick Deslauriers the puck on the second goal of the game. That is a play I don't think I've ever seen Jacob Larson make. He's always kind of had that potential, we thought, but the fact that he got the puck behind the net, took it all the way back to the blue line, skated to the other side of the ice, blew right by one of the Oilers players, and then fired a strike across to Nick Deslauriers. All he had to do was just get a stick on it and fire it past Mike Smith. That is what we've been waiting for from Jacob Larson, and whether it's the new guys coming in to push him or just kind of the energy around the locker room right now, that is what we need to see from Jacob Larson on a consistent basis, of him just playing at a high level and then being responsible in his own end. And this is one of my favorite games that I've seen Jacob Larson play all season.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, a lot of people were playing a different style for a little bit, so it was good to see, and especially against, like I said, you got Edmonton that can really kind of just turn it on against you. But I think it went through. They went through the first 2 periods. I don't think Draisaitl or McDavid had a shot on goal, chances, but no shots on goals. But eventually penalties finally started to factor in, and
once you get the power play, and you've got McDavid and Draisaitl out there, it's eventually going to go in.
You're in trouble. You're in a lot of trouble.
Draisaitl ends up picking up the power play goal, but I want to get to the Henrique goal, because we talked about Adam Henrique a bit, and he's just been on fire for the Ducks over the last 2 games. 3 goals, 3 assists. He's at 24 goals. There's a chance, if he stays hot, he could hit 30. Be the third time in his career that he hit 30. He could hit 50 points again this year as well. He's just unbelievable, and he's changed my opinion of him too. At the beginning of the year, I thought he'd be a guy you would trade, and looking at how Sam Steele hasn't quite developed the way I thought he would, he's become such a valuable player to kind of keep things going for the Ducks here. And Danton Heinen ends up picking his first point up with the Ducks, and it was a nice one-touch pass to Adam Henrique, who just is finding these positions right now, these open spaces in the slot, and he makes a nice fake to end up getting the puck past Mike Smith. But man, you can't say enough about the play of Adam Henrique lately and how he's just kind of leading these teams to points. I mean, he's the only reason the Ducks got a point in the game against Vegas, because he had the 2 goals to bring it from 5-3 to 5-5. And then he has an important goal in this game as well to keep the Ducks in this game, and eventually they end up getting the win in overtime. But Adam Henrique, and he sets up the game winner in OT too. Adam Henrique is just a key piece of the reason the Ducks are scraping points away right now.
Yeah, he's subtly a really great player. it doesn't seem like much, and then all of a sudden he's in the right spot at the right time, and it's if the play's happening, all of a sudden it pops out to him, and it's it's Henrique. Of course it's Henrique. It gets to him, and he scores that goal. So that's just what it's felt like lately, where he is in the right spot at the right time, and he's got the finish to do it. And if he's not doing it, he's creating a chance that maybe someone else is burying.
Yeah, and if we want to talk about confidence in a player, Sonny Milano getting on the power play in overtime, and then obviously just making a smart play there. That play between him and Adam Henrique was just so deceptively smart for them to switch positions there, and then
real quick,
and he kind of establishes good stick position in front of the net, and then Henrique just gets the pass there, and he does what any good goal scorer does, just has a stick on the ice and redirects it past Mike Smith.
In a really good spot. That's not even it's not an easy little tip in that he does there. He actually has to put it between the skate of a tall Mike Smith and the post. He's in tight, but he put it, right where it needed to be. And then if you also want to give him kudos on another thing, he's the one who drew the penalty against Connor McDavid in overtime to create the power play with a little stutter step. Usually it's McDavid doing that to other people, and he did it to him. So that was fun to see for him. So he did a lot of great things that game.
Yeah, I mean, should the Ducks be picking up points right now when they're in a good spot draft wise? Probably not. But it is nice to see, especially a game when you have so many new faces in the lineup, to not only see the Ducks grind out a win, but to see the new guys have such an impact, obviously, especially Sonny Milano. But I think Danton Heinen had a decent game. Juice and Irwin came in and played all right. I liked Agazino on the fourth line. I thought he provided enough energy and enough effort to be a player that could stick around for the rest of the year. So it's one of those games that you kind of write it off and say, I don't care about draft position tonight. I like the effort. I like that the new guys are fitting, and like you said, there's excitement injected back in the fan base, in the back in the team, that there are a bunch of new faces, and it kind of feels like a rebirth of the season. Obviously, the Ducks aren't going to go anywhere in the playoffs, but it would be nice to see them play good hockey, and for these guys who are, especially the important players who came in Heinen and Sonny Milano, to have good ends to the season and kind of project well for next year.
For sure. Yeah, I'm built towards next season. I'm fine with that. I want to see a couple of wins here and there, especially a big game, rival games, things like that. We're playing the Kings or something or whoever. It's just someone we'd want to beat. Those are the ones. Like Edmonton, I love to beat Edmonton. Played Nashville, love to beat Nashville. And same thing with the Kings and the Sharks. Just kind of like to beat those guys. But if we are beating Pittsburgh, I'm not gonna cry about that. Or we're not beating Colorado. It's like, they're really good. That should probably happen that way.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Pittsburgh, the next upcoming games for the Ducks, it's a bit of a mixed bag in terms of opponents and difficulty of the games coming up. You got Pittsburgh tomorrow, which is going, I guess if you're listening to this on Friday, Pittsburgh tonight. It's going to be a tough game. Pittsburgh is one of the best teams in the league, and they've got Sidney Crosby back fully healthy now.
And they got one goal against the Kings and lost.
Yes, and they got shut out by the Leafs a few days ago or last week. So up and down for the Penguins, but they are a great team. Yeah. And I think we talked about the Penguins probably on the last show on how they just seem to plug and play these guys in. And the effort is just always there from these guys. And you've got these guys who just seem to come out of nowhere for the Penguins and just play well. So they're a team that's never not going to fight in these games. So it will be a tough one. I'm interested to see how the Ducks... Still. Yeah, I'm interested to see how they kind of not rebound, but kind of continue the momentum from this win, and for the new guys joining the lineup in the game against the Oilers. You've got New Jersey on Sunday, Chicago on Tuesday, and then Colorado, which would normally be, one of probably the second hardest game of the trip of these four games. But Colorado's just ravaged with injuries. No Rantanen, no Kadri, no Grubauer. So it might be a little bit easier of a game than we expect. And Chicago could honestly be the second hardest game of this trip, the way they're playing lately.
Yeah, Chicago's doing well, didn't they? I think they just beat Tampa Bay tonight,
they beat Tampa Bay 5-2. Yeah, Dominic Kubalik had a hat trick.
Yeah, but the only thing with Colorado is just it's back-to-back, so they fly out to Chicago, do the game, and then they fly to Colorado. And I always feel there's an advantage for Colorado if someone's flying in and then you're at that altitude, and especially if you're back-to-backs and you had to travel. It's just
you got a well-rested Nathan McKinnon just blowing right by you.
Yeah,
look what he did to Lindholm. Look what he did to Lindholm when the Ducks had rest, and now they're going to go in. They're tired. Coming off a hard game against Chicago, and he's just going to be ready to go. It could be a nightmare. But I'm no matter what, no matter the outcome of these games, I'm just interested to see if the effort is still there. Such a small sample size with just the one game against the Oilers, but hopefully we continue, even if it's not goals or points from Milano and Heinen, if we just continue to see good play from them and see if they fit. I mean, obviously, I would love for Milano to stay on that top line with Getzlaf and Raquel and to kind of gain some chemistry there. And it would be nice to see Steele and Jones get going with Silfverberg. I mean, obviously, the hype is around Heinen and Milano right now, but the young guys on this team need to start, kind of increasing their production here. Steele and Jones aren't that much younger than Sonny Milano, and I know he's been around the NHL a bit longer than they have, but it's time that they start kind of taking control of this team and bumping up their production here. They're given more time on ice and more time in the top nine than they have all year. So hopefully we see some kind of boon from production for them.
Yeah, a little transition. Yeah, time for that next step. Let's take that next step, boys.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it from Steele and Jones last year in the last 20 games of the season, especially Sam Steele. Like, he went on a tear, in the last stretch of the year, and Jones finally took the monkey off his back and got his first goal and started playing really well. So hopefully we see a nice late stretch from here. Speaking of young guys, we talked about this or briefly mentioned it earlier. Troy Terry got sent down to San Diego, was starting to play pretty well. Obviously the points weren't still there, and that was part of one of the reasons Dallas Eakins mentioned on why they sent him down there. The other thing he said, which I thought was interesting, is that when he played down there last year, he was kind of just an accomplice. He was just a good player on that team, but he wasn't, a main guy. And he said now what we'd like to try to take on is to be the guy to drive the program, take on a leadership role, and keep that team going in the right direction. An interesting comment from Eakins on Troy Terry there.
Yeah, I think it says a lot where they like where his development has been with the big club. And at this point, I think they almost want to kind of like, hey, we see what we like what we see in you. Obviously, it's still early in your career, but what would be a good thing to do now is let's nurture that, be a bigger leader, and take the that initiative in playing and make it work here. See if you can't do something fun and get to the playoffs with San Diego, and then next year that experience kind of helps you once again that next step in maturity and that next step in production, because he's the one who's closest from what I've seen at taking that next step to being a bona fide regular with this team. He's done a great job since coming back from his injury and his stint down in San Diego. He looks a lot better every time he goes down there. He seems to come back and is just just a little bit better. So give him a little bit more time there, but I can definitely see him being a much more regular player and a bigger threat offensively, creatively too. So
yeah, I definitely don't think he needs to be down there in terms I think he is almost too good for that league. Every time he goes down there, he plays well. But I like the approach from Dallas Eakins here. He's like, we're not sending him down there necessarily because he's not playing well. Like, obviously the points are coming in the NHL, but he's making an effort. But we're sending him down there to kind of become that guy, to become a bit more of a leader, to kind of commit more to the program and to the team. Yeah. and I don't think Troy Terry's ever going to be a leader or a guy who wears the A or the C on the Ducks, but just kind of get that commitment from him to be that guy who even if he's not a leader in terms of a letter on this team, to go down there and learn that and to come up, and anytime you're out there on any shift, to just want to be that guy, to want to have the puck on your stick, to want to make plays happen. I think that's what they're trying to instill in him, and that's confidence and that's kind of commitment on his own part, and I think that's one thing that he's missing is that commitment and that kind of want to be the guy when he's out there. And I like the term accomplice, where he I think he's been an accomplice with the Ducks this year. He's just been a guy, one of the guys out there. If the puck's on his stick, he'll try and make something happen, but he's not looking to be the guy. And if Troy Terry is going to be successful, he needs to, every time he's out there, every shift he needs to be a guy that wants to have the puck on his stick, because that's when Troy Terry is successful. So I hope he does it. I honestly do, because I think he can be an effective player for this team going forward, but he needs to take that next step. And it's a bit harder, I think, for him, other than Jones and Comtois and Steele, to take that step, because I feel compared to all of them, Troy Terry's a bit more one-dimensional. Like, Jones has his size and his speed. Sam Steele's a good two-way center. Maxime Comtois also uses his body to be a bit more of a power forward. Troy Terry is, if he's not putting up points and he's not making plays, I'm not saying he's not doing anything, but it's harder to notice his, the other assets he brings to the game.
He's a playmaker, and he's got to make plays.
Exactly. Yep. Let's break down a bit of the injuries here. Obviously, Eric Gudbranson and Cam Fowler are still on the IR. An update on them was that they're both going to be out about 2 more weeks. So no concrete. I don't think they're going to rush them back. There's no point. Especially Cam Fowler. You're not going to try and rush him back anytime soon. But man, the injuries keep piling up on the blue line. The Ducks were healthy for a bit there, but then Gudbranson went down, Fowler went down for a nagging injury, and then Hampus Lindholm, nasty looking injury in the game against the Oilers, went in left shoulder first into the boards. And we've had a guy, not just tweeting us, but he's been, kind of tweeting about a couple different teams this year. I'm gonna find the tweet now, but he's a doctor. I want to get his name correct here. Dr. Harjas Grewal. He's made this commitment this year to kind of quote tweet and weigh in on possible injuries before they're announced. So he said it appears to be a separated shoulder for Hampus Lindholm, which carries a minimum.
You have to be a doctor to see that.
No, for sure. But, I mean, it helps to have somebody who... And he may be wrong.
You got the blue check mark in the Twitter. I don't.
Well, he may be wrong completely, but he says it could be a separated shoulder, anywhere from 10 to 14 days, minimum absence. Less likely, but possible, is a broken collarbone. So, knowing the Ducks, we'll get upper body injury, and that's it. We won't hear much more until later down the road. Yeah, but potentially season ending for Hampus Lindholm. Anything right now that's 4 weeks plus takes you to basically the end of the year. End of March, early April, and at that point, what is the the point in bringing him back for the last 2 or 3 games of the season? You might as well just shut him down and make sure he's fully healthy going into next year, right?
And give everyone else a look. See what you like with the newer guys coming in.
Yeah, exactly. Let's couple more things. I'm going to edit it real quick here, but there's a couple comments from Bob Murray I wanted to get into, specifically about the young core and how the next 20 games here are going to tell him about the player and kind of what his plans are for the summer. So this was on the young players and his lack of, or his concern and lack of leadership from the group that is 25 to 29 years old. He said the next 20 games are going to tell us about our young players. We've definitely improved our speed and skill. Now we'll see how the pieces fit. It'll be interesting to see with our young guys what form the team takes and where we have to go in the summer. So a bit, and I'm sorry, he continues here and says, I think the next 20 games or whatever we've got left is going to tell us a lot about some of our players and some of the players that we have in this team. We've definitely improved our speed and skill, and now it's where the pieces fit. So it kind of seems like two things here. Wants to see how the young players are going to take a step forward, like we mentioned. Jones, Steele, if Terry comes back up, if Comtois gets a chance, needs to kind of see how their development's going to go. And also a bit of a shot at, Silverberg, who's 29, Fowler, who's 28, Manson, who's 28, Lindholm, who's 26, and Raquel, who's 26, to say, man, you guys got to step it up, or I'm going to trade you. You've got to show me that you belong. And you remember last year he made these comments, and Brandon Montour got traded. He said the group around 23 to 28, I'm not impressed by them, and they traded Brandon Montour, and we traded Andre Kasha, who's 24 this year as well. I think these are the final 5 guys that if he doesn't feel they're going to be a part of the long-term future, I think after these next 20 games, if he sees something he doesn't like, he'll be more open to trading some of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, you're only going to let them go for as long as you're prepared to do it, and if they're not going to show you kind of that, well, we're the next wave, because Getzlaf, Getzlaf's days kind of numbered here. So just because you got that A on there, doesn't mean that you're that material. So you got to kind of show it to him or prove it to him. So it's tough. It doesn't seem like we have a precise leader. I don't know. I'm not sure who's going to be the next captain. You just it's either you get the quiet captain, or I think Bob Murray wants to see a more vocal, determined captain in there. So I think he's waiting to see who's going to be captain, and if he can't find anyone who's going to be there, then he doesn't want a whole bunch of alternates or assistants. He's going to try and find a guy who's going to do it. I think I take it back. He's going to give it to Manson.
Yeah, I think so. But Manson's one of those guys where there's interest in him. And if things do, he played good in the Edmonton game, but if things don't go the way Murray wants, I think Manson is probably at the top of that list. I think Raquel could be right up there too. I think I don't want to say his time's running out, because I really like Rickard Raquel and I love his contract, and I think in a better team, I think he'd be a player that can take a step forward and get back to 30 goals. But he could be one of those guys that Murray's talking about that needs to take a step forward this year, because he's been a bit inconsistent this year and has been a guy that at times we thought was doing really well and was getting back to be the guy we expected. And as of late, just really hasn't been able to put up the points. And similar to what we said with Troy Terry, if Raquel's not putting up points,
got to come from
there's
somewhere.
a problem. Like like this is what he's kind of paid to do, even though he's on a great contract. Like this is what he's here for, is to put up points and put the puck in the back of the net. And meanwhile, you've got Adam Henrique, who's making no excuses and has put up 24 goals. He's not making excuses that they're a bad team and his production's down because the team's not playing well. Raquel
Arguably has a bigger responsibility being center than Raquel would.
And he's got less opportunities. I mean, he's playing less minutes than Raquel, presumably. I'd have to double check that, but he's not playing on the top line. He's playing a second line role. Raquel's still getting first power play time. Like, this is a guy that is getting every opportunity that Adam Henrique's getting, if not more, and isn't putting up the points. So I think he's a guy that's kind of at the forefront of that needs to really step things up. I don't think he should be traded. He's a great player. He's a great guy to have around the team, but he needs to take a step forward here and prove to the management, the coaching staff, that he can be that guy.
Yeah, because it seemed like that signing for what we signed him for was a great signing. Now it looks like a pretty good signing. A good, decent signing with, not a whole lot, and especially for the potential. But you're just like, man, that was supposed to be a great knock it out of the park signing, but we're just not seeing the offensive upside from it. So I think Murray's a little pissed. Like, come on, it's supposed to look really good. It's not looking that good. You're not making me look that great.
Yeah,
I want to be great.
We hope he turns around. But one guy, last kind of topic I want to get to here, because it was mentioned in the chat, Maxime Comtois has been absolutely tearing it up for San Diego over the last little bit. He was named AHL Player of the Week last week. He had 5 goals in 5 straight, 6 goals and 2 assists for 8 points over that 5-game stretch. Nice to see him figuring things out, for things going well with San Diego. We talked a bit on the last show how maybe he's working his way back to getting into the Ducks lineup. A bit tough now, with Sonny Milano here and Danton Heinen here and Max Jones. Like, I think if only way Comtois I think gets back in is if Max Jones goes down to San Diego, or if Kiefer Sherwood goes back and Comtois is the one who comes up. I think that's a bit more likely scenario, where Sherwood going back down and the way he was producing for San Diego can kind of offset what Comtois has been doing lately. Yeah. I think that's the way Comtois gets back up. I don't think it's out of the question. I think if Sherwood's the guy going back down, Comtois very well could be given a last, little 10-game stretch here to see how he can do. I mean, he hasn't, out of all 4 of the young players, he's not been given that much of a look this year. So it would be nice to at least see him get another chance before the season's over.
Yeah, or just let him build up that opportunity in San Diego to get them in the playoffs and see what he can do. So either way, it doesn't really matter as much as far as a big impact. But keep doing what you're doing. You're doing good in the AHL, and you keep that up, and for sure be back in the NHL at some point. Definitely going to get another shot.
Nate asked in the chat, how old is Kiefer Sherwood? He's
like 24.
24, I think. I'm going to check that now.
I believe so.
I think so. Let's.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's 24. He's 24.
He'll be 20.
He'll be 25 before the season's over. His birthday's March 31st, so
almost there.
It definitely has some time. And one guy I want to mention, because we're talking about young players to kind of wrap up the show here. Trevor Zegras has 3 games left in his regular season. The regular season for Boston University ends on Saturday, March 7th against Northeastern, and then they'll move into playoff hockey. Depending on how that goes for Boston University, Trevor Zegras might be here as early as sometime to mid to late March, potentially. I don't know when the playoffs start for them, but there is a chance that he obviously has to sign his entry-level contract first. But, man, like, he's got 33 points in 30 games for Boston University. He's third in freshman scoring in terms of points per game. He's above Cole Caulfield, only behind Alex Newhook and Nick Abruzzese from Harvard. There's a clear indicator that he's probably too good to go back for a second year to Harvard. And obviously we remember the interview we did with him and the comments that he made was that he was kind of planning on being a one and done, and he would see how things go this year. And I think with the way things are going, I honestly cannot see him going back for a second year. I just don't see the benefit to him as a player, and I can't see management advising him to go back for a second year with the way he's been producing. Like, this is a guy, I fully think the Ducks will sign him to an entry-level contract. Hopefully, and I don't want to wish ill on his team and hope they go out they go out in the playoffs here. But I really hope he gets a chance to play at least a couple games for the Ducks this year. We can get a small taste of what we can expect for next year.
Yes, a Zegras watch. 2020.
Zegras watch is in full effect after March 7th. And then we'll be hoping he gets a couple games in. All right, that does it for the show. We just hit the hour mark here, so we're going to close it out. Just a quick kind of a note on where the podcast will be after this. It won't really change for you if you get it through iTunes, through Spotify, through Google Podcasts. Nothing's going to change. We're just moving our hosting platform over from Spreaker to Simplecast. We've joined up with Blue Wire Podcast to be on their network. We think that's going to be really beneficial for our podcast. Nothing, like I said, live show's not going to change. You're really not going to see the change too much. Just hopefully it's going to be a nice platform where we can continue to grow the show, and we love what the guys over at Blue Wire are doing, so we're hoping that can be a nice way for us to continue to grow this and continue to put out the best product for you guys.
Happy to be a part of it.
All right. I know Jay's got to go. I got to go. It's getting late. We'll be back with the Ducks schedule probably sometime around Tuesday to Thursday next week.
Either Tuesday or Thursday. Try not to do it on days.
There's the back-to-back kind of makes it difficult. But we'll let you guys know. We'll put it out on social media for everybody in our Discord chat. We'll put it out there. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
All right, bye, guys.